With the 2022 season over and the off-season underway, now is a good time to look back across 2022 and how the Women's World Tour teams fared. Some teams pulled off plenty of big wins thanks to star riders, whereas some accumulated more minor points hauls on a regular basis. The big difference between those at the top of the rankings and those near the bottom is the depth of point scorers. A team like FDJ has 3 individual riders who scored more than 1,000 points, and the contrast is Roland Kogias, who had a star rider, and Tamara Janova, who scored nearly 1,000 points, but then only 2 other riders scoring more than 100 points. So starting with the first team, it's Canyon Tram. They finished 6th in the rankings, with 1 win, and I've given them a grade C. The lowest amount of wins on this list just about sums up Canyon Tram's season. Remarkably, they still finished 6th in the rankings, but that's down to plenty of hard racing for podium spots. It's almost like they didn't roll the dice enough and be prepared to lose in order to win races. So often we see them sitting in as the move goes up the road. The introduction of Magnus Backstedt as head DS next season may shake things up in this area. It's certainly not a truly bad season, it just feels like a safe one. All of the riders scored points, even Chloe Dygert, who did a solid Omloop Hunt Newsblad, before not being able to race the rest of the year. Paulina Royackers took the team's only win at Drango after an impressive May. Young talent like Neve Bradbury and Shari Bossite have come through and impressed. The big monkey on the back is Kazi Niewiadoma's winless streak, which now stretches back over 3 years. She consistently finishes on the podium like at the Tour de France Femmes, but hasn't been able to nail down a win when the opportunity arises. Next up is EF Education Tibco Silicon Valley Bank. They finished the rankings in 11th this season with 13 wins, and I've given them a solid grade B. The first Women's World Tour season has gone pretty well for EF Education Tibco Silicon Valley Bank. Despite losing the likes of Kristin Faulkner, Sarah Giganti and Eriona Mina in the off-season, they've managed to improve and finish 2 places higher in the rankings. The standout rider for the team is Veronica Ewers, who's really broken through in the 2022 season. She's now a top 25 ranked rider after only joining the pro peloton halfway through last season. The team has always been strong at scouting talent and appears to have hit another home run with the American. She's been well supported by Krista Dobell-Hickok, who has moved up a level this year and won the Tour Feminine Pyrenees. Emma Langley excelled mostly in the American races, winning the Tour of the Gila and becoming the national champion. Top 10s in the Tour de l'Ardèche and the Tour de Feminine Pyrenees also showed that she's quietly had a good year too. The hugely hyped Zoe Backstedt is a great signing for the team and has already put together some decent road results for the team near the end of the year. Perhaps the only negative is the lack of a Women's World Tour victory in 2022. FDJ Suez Futuroscope have had a great season. They finished 4th in the rankings with 18 wins, and I've given them an A. FDJ continues to improve year on year, this year improving to 4th from 8th in 2021. The signing of Grace Brown has been a big part of that. She adds a 3rd string to the bow behind Uhtred Ludwig and Cavalli. The latter really pushed on this year too, taking big wins at Flèche Wallonne and Amstel Gold Race before finishing 2nd at the Giro d'Honneur. The crash that effectively ended her season, although she did eventually come back to race in October, that took place at the Tour de France Femmes, robbed us of another challenger to Van Vleuten. The popular Dane, Cecilie Uhtred Ludwig, had a career year with 4 wins, her first year with multiple wins since 2017. 3 of the 4 were Women's World Tour wins as well, 1 at the Tour de France Femmes and a stage in GC at the Tour of Scandinavia. Where the team excelled was in the depth of riders taking wins and points. 8 different riders took wins, and the entire squad all scored more than 100 points each. Whilst only the top 8 counts the rankings, that's still an impressive stat. The loss of Brodie Chapman will be felt in 2023, but the likes of Gladys Verhulst and Losa de Geest add some fun attacking options going forward. Human Powered Health have had a tough season. They finished the rankings 27th. Bear in mind there's only 14 World Tour teams. They took 3 wins, and I've given them a grade F. 2022 was a backward step for Human Powered Health. They went from 22nd in the 2021 rankings to 27th. We saw the team regularly making attacks in races, but it didn't translate into wins or many results of note. Cypriot Antri Christofourou was the team's highest ranked rider, but she scored the majority of her points while still at Farto BTC before her mid-season move. One of the few positives was the performance of Eriona Mina at the Tour de Feminine Pyrenees, with a 2nd place in GC. Nina Boisman also put together a decently solid season. The team's missing a rider of genuine high class like they had with Clara Koppenberg in 2021. Some of their transfer business this season will help with the likes of Alice Barnes and Dara Pikulik joining them. That will give them some race finishes that they didn't really have this season. However, their Women's World Tour status probably looks like quite a long shot in order to achieve the top 15 ranking required at the end of 2023. Jumbo-Visma finished 10th in the rankings. They took 12 wins and have given them a B+. Jumbo-Visma's sort of in a good place. Obviously they've got Marianne Vos as the figurehead, and she continues to deliver success. 8 Women's World Tour victories this season is a good return. Behind her, the wins are tougher to come by, but Rihanna Marcus had a perfectly timed attack at the Simat Ladies Tour. She showed that it was possible for the team to win without Vos. Naturally becoming national champion in the TT helps as well for Marcus. Anna Henderson won the prologue at the Festival LC Jacobs, and Naomi Rugg won the Swiss Under-23 TT Nationals too. Compared to many other teams, Jumbo-Visma is a little bit of an ageing lineup. Aside from Rugg and Riedman, the majority of the team is approaching 30. As such, they should be near their peak, but mishaps like Van den Boss's ongoing concussion struggles prevent the team from fully maxing out its potential. Some of the signings they've made for next season will help alleviate that, clearly aware of needing that sort of mini refresh in the lineup. They're not in danger of missing out and staying in the Women's World Tour at the end of 2023, but there are possible reservations for the next cycle from 2024 to 2026 without some strong recruitment, especially if Marianne Vos decides to retire at any point soon. Liv Racing Extra finished 13th in the rankings with 3 wins, and I've given them a solid C. For the team, they've got to be kind of careful next season after a bit of a so-so year in 2022. They only took 3 wins all year, with 2 by the new signing Rachele Barbieri. She sprinted well after returning to the road from the track. They haven't quite acquired enough points to not have to keep looking over their shoulder next season, but signing Mavi Garcia should help out with that. Alison Jackson continues to be one of their most consistent riders and fun to watch and race, but behind her there's probably a bit of a dearth of high-quality point scorers. Part of that is down to the season that Amber van der Hulst had, where she came a bit down to earth after a strong 2021. That's as a result of an injury, and hopefully she should rebound in 2023. The team is certainly strongest at one-day races, but barely made an impact at any of the 3 biggest tours. With the likes of Jackson, Barbieri and Newmanova, they've got some strong finishes, and supporting Barbieri to the hilt feels like the most obvious pathway to success. Movistar finished 5th in the rankings with 26 wins, and I'm giving them an A. Their overall ranking hides the fact that obviously they won all 3 Grand Tours through Annemiek van Vleuten, and she was the number 1 rider in the season as well. She was such a figurehead that she took almost half the team's points by herself, so understandably there's a bit of a gulf between her and the rest of the team. But Emma Norsgaard and Arlena Sierra did well with 3 wins and 5 wins each. Elena Eric and Sheila Gutierrez also won twice each, and there was a popular first European win for Sarah Gigante as well, who enjoyed another tough season thanks to injuries. Paula Patino did a great underrated job, often being the last climbing help for Van Vleuten, with Barbara Garishi another solid sprinter of the lineup. They've technically fallen back 2 places in the rankings, but thanks to Van Vleuten they've absolutely knocked the results out the park and hit all their major goals anyway. Roland Kogas Erdevice, they finished 18th in the rankings with 2 wins, and I've given them a grade E. They were the whipping girls of the women's peloton for so much of the 2022 season, but thanks to Tamara Jonova, the team still finds themselves in a reasonable position. The Russian scored 70% of the team's points and was comfortably the highest single rider percentage of any team this year. Caroline Barr won the Swiss National Championships, and Olga Zabelinskaya won the Islamic Solidarity Games TT apparently. Petra Stiasny delivered a ride I'd been waiting for at the Tour de Romandie, and it pretty much turned out to be a last for the team. Much of the supporting cast hasn't been a Women's World Tour standard, which often led Dranova to usually be alone. With at least one more rider in support, she could have converted a couple of those many top 10 finishes into a win. Their recruitment for 2023 looks better, but they're definitely missing still some star quality. They've done just about the bare minimum to give themselves a shot at staying in the Women's World Tour after next season. ST Works are the number 1 ranked team with 19 wins, but I've given them a grade A- rather than a full grade A. It's sort of tough to argue that the number 1 ranked team didn't always deliver this season, but the dominance of Annemiek van Vleuten in the major stage races left ST Works chasing. It's been sort of a mixed year for Demi Vollering as well. Not bad, but seemingly always a number 2 behind van Vleuten, including famously at Omloop Het Nieuwsblad. The highs of a dominant 3-stage win in GC at Zulia Women were tempered slightly by crashes at Burgos and Scandinavia. Lotte Kopecky won Flanders in the Belgian colours, and her Strade Bianche win was a rare loss for van Vleuten in 2022. On a similar note, it was only in the last race of the season that Ashley Moorman-Pasio was able to deliver another one at the Tour de Romandie. Nee Fisher-Black continues to impress and looks a sure bet for the future, and Marlon Roysett at the Euros TT and that infamous stage win at the Tour de France Femmes on the gravel. It's probably worth remembering that ST Works was also affected by the crash Amy Peters suffered heading into the season. Not only a rider down, but the emotional toll was also visible at several points in the year. especially in the desperation to take that first win of the season. Team bikeexchange-jayco, they're 9th in the rankings with 14 wins. I've given them a B+. The biggest improvement from the team this season has been in time trials. Kristen Faulkner managed to win both the Tour de Suisse time trial stage and the opening prologue of the Giro d'Onne. The results went deeper than that though, with the team having a 1-2-3 in Switzerland and a 1-2 in Cagliari. Even at the Simat Ladies Tour, the team was able to get Amanda Spratt to 3rd and Ruby Roseman Gannon to 6th in a time trial. The team is sort of in a renewal phase. Amanda Spratt's early season surgery for iliac artery endofibrosis meant that she spent a lot of the season on the comeback trail before delivering some results. She also moves on at the end of this year after being the team's figurehead for a long time. Kristen Faulkner should take up that mantle and was particularly impressive at the Giro d'Onne, winning solo on stage 9 and finish 11th in GC. That could have been higher with a clearer picture of where Spratt was at, with Faulkner losing time supporting her then race leader. 3rd at Itzulia Women and 7th in the Women's Tour. It was the 2nd place in the Tour de Suisse where she clawed back Lucinda Brand's break, only to fall on the last corner that really sparked things. Another star was Alex Manley, who came back to the road after a couple of seasons doing track going into the Olympics and had a big breakout year. She took her first UCI win and then added 5 more too, including a maiden Women's World Tour team in Scandinavia. She won the Thuringen Ladies Tour and then was 4th at the Women's Tour to show that she's a great all-rounder across lots of different parkour. The team's points tally suffers without an Australian parts of the season, and they're still some way off recreating the high placings they had with Van Vleuten, but 9th this season after 10th last year is an improvement, and the return of the Tour Down Under next year and other races in Australia can only give them more chances too. Team DSM finished 3rd in the rankings with 28 wins, notably 23 came from Lorena Wiebes. I've given them a grade A. 2022 is a bit of an end of a cycle for the team. The culmination of some strong recruitment saw the team reap rewards with Lorena Wiebes, Liana Lippert and Juliette Labousse. Wiebes took 23 victories and the well-drilled sprint train delivered her to victory time and time again. She's comfortably the best sprinter of the women's peloton, and Team DSM used her skills to full effect. Juliette Labousse won her first Women's World Tour stage race at the WorldTour of Burgos, where she had a strong week and a strong finishing climb. Her solo ride to a stage win at the Giro d'Onne was also particularly impressive. Liana Lippert became German champion once again, and wasn't far off from adding a whole load more wins too. The issue for DSM now is how do they replicate this success. Wiebes, Lippert and Mackay are moving on, and Labousse will lead a young team with masses of potential. Charlotte Kool looks ready to step into Wiebes' shoes for 2023, but it could be a bump back down to earth for the team with fewer success overall. Trek Segafredo was 2nd in the rankings. They took 28 victories, and I've given them a grade A. They started the season as the 2nd best team and finished it as the 2nd best team. What hides the improvement though is the sheer amount of distance they have closed on SD Works. At the end of 2021 it was a 3,000 point gap, but they've closed that down to around 350 points at the end of 2022. In a year where they lost Lizzie Deignan to maternity leave and Taylor Wiles to iliac artery endofibrosis, Trek has still managed to rack up the wins. The signing of Elisa Balsamo paid off handsomely, and she proved there isn't a world champion's curse in women's cycling. She took a joint high team amount of wins with Ellen van Dijk, who won 6 of the 7 time trials she raced this season. Similar to FDJ Suez for Churoscope, the amount of winners is impressive at Trek Segafredo. They took 7 different riders to victory in 2022. Shirin van Androoy won 3 races and she was one of the shining stars of the season. She eventually won the Women's World Tour Young Rider standings. It wasn't too much of a surprise for those of us who follow cyclocross, but she looks set to be a great foil and future heir to the role that Lucinda Brand does on the team at the moment. The team made some big signings for 2023 as well, and they'll be gunning for that top spot that they last held in 2020. UAE Team ADQ finished 7th in the rankings with 17 wins. I've given them a B+. It was very much a season of 2 halves for the team. Marta Bastinelli won 7 times by the start of May, although none of them were at Women's World Tour level, and that was enough to convince her to go back on her retirement call. Micah Bugard became a race winner for the first time by winning Omloop van Borselen, and Elena Ivanchenko took her own maiden win at the Bretagne Ladies Tour. Sofia Bertizzolo was another rider scoring over 1,000 points. That was largely through consistency, as she only won once at the Trofeo Oro in Euro in early March. The second half of the season saw Mavi Garcia come to the fore. She took her first Women's World Tour victory at the Vuelta of Burgos, and a very impressive win at Classic Lorient Aglo-Plouay. She was strong at the Giro d'Onne, eventually just fading behind Marta Cavalli and finishing 3rd. It's somewhat a shame then that Garcia is moving on, as UAE Team ADQ has a very Valcar-looking makeover in 2023. This season feels like they got the best out their lineup, and it's hard to really pick out many negatives. The lack of a Women's World Tour win early in the year was offset nicely by the amount of races won. Be interested to see if the new recruits next year propel them further up the standings. With the likes of Silvia Persico and Chiara Consoni, they should get plenty of wins. Finally, UnoX. They finished the year ranked 24th with 3 wins, and I've given them an E. This year was UnoX's first year in the Pro Peloton, let alone the Women's World Tour. That particular loophole was closed behind them, so we won't see another team instantly join the Women's World Tour ranks. The team's had an injury-ridden year. The team's main rider, Susanna Anderson, started the year well with 4th at Vuelta CF Feminas, and she had a solid Classics campaign too. However, she only raced once between the end of May and mid-August, failing to finish the Norwegian national champs. She could easily have scored more points in that time frame as well, as the races ideally suited her. The season ended in early September with another collarbone break. Mie Bjørndal Otterstad suffered a brutal crash at the Tour of Scandinavia that ended her season. Rebecca Kerner crashed out of the Ride London Classique, and plenty more. The team struggled for UCI points, with one of my breakout picks, Wilma Arlauson, scoring no points at all, along with the road captain Hannah Barnes. Some of the new signings for 2023 will solve that, but they've given themselves a big uphill battle to retain their Women's World Tour status. One bright spark was Nina Artazolo, who was the team's second highest scorer at just 19 years old. The Finn will be one to watch next year. Thanks for watching. If you've got any thoughts on any of the grades that I've given to the teams, please leave a comment below.